Gurubhyo Namaha. I would like to begin with salutations to some of my direct gurus and mentors. Some of them are sitting here in the audience, as well as those indirect ones from whom I have gained a lot of inspiration. Any civilization with a long history such as ours and a wide variety of experiences and achievements cannot do it without the basis of a very strong knowledge tradition. We are no different, long history and unique aspects about our history. For example, some people say this is the longest still surviving civilization in the world. Some of you might have heard, this not just in terms of the longest surviving, but some of you might have heard of the study conducted by Angus Madison, essentially describing how what we know as today's Bharat was the richest country in the world, and Rajiv Kumarji will know much better than me about this, but comprising maybe 23-24% of the world's GDP, something like that, for many centuries, 16, 17 centuries. We also know this as a land where many people have come and found their inspiration, ideas, refuge. So when you have such a thing, and you also have remarkable accomplishments, even earlier and now being talked about a whole lot of people. So, for example, we now know for a fact that, for instance, what we today know as algebra, right, was probably known as, was known as Bijaganit, and through some connections in the Arabic world and then a whole bunch of things that happened, and Professor Ram Subramaniam here again knows much more about all of that than me, essentially originated in some sense in India. And it also was not, some diffused kind of algebra that was happening. So you have, manuscripts and, evidence where people were using symbols to perform certain calculations. So amazing, actually. Similarly, there are achievements in arithmetic. In the modern times, we know the genius of Ramanujan. We see all around us how Ayurveda has played a role, and we have Rajiv Vasudevanji to talk about how it can play a bigger role, even a bigger role, how it is playing a big role in the whole world. We also know that this tradition has provided ideas not just in science and technology, but a whole lot of other areas. Philosophy is one, we have the Shatdarshanas. There is also the idea of how a state should look like, what statecraft should be, how policies to be made, how an individual should have his or her growth, how societies can function properly, how they can be organized in a certain manner. All of these ideas abound. Even the concept of justice, so Justice Rama Joyce has written extensively on this. Even Amartya Sen's book, Idea of Justice, slightly refers to what a probably Indian idea of justice could be. I was recently also reading about this book called Mismeasuring Our Lives, and Rajuji would, I'm sure, know about this. Many wonderful ideas that have come from this land, and they would not come without some knowledge systems. Now, the purpose behind knowing all of this, to my mind, is not just to know these as facts. Of course, that is one purpose, but not do that alone. It is not also only to gain pride and to feel good about the whole thing. That is also one purpose. It leads to a lot of things, but that is not the only thing. If we read about some of these things, and if we get into more and more details, I think what we will uncover is the entire thinking systems and thinking frameworks that people in this land have tried to, in this civilization have tried to develop, and which have influenced a lot of things in this country and in many countries abroad. There is a recent book, one may or may not agree with the entire narrative that is put out there, but a recent book by William Dalrymple that talks about how, there is a golden road. He has a certain concept of how India was playing a big role in trade and spreading of knowledge and all of that. So a whole bunch of things have happened, but knowing this only as facts is not enough. My sense is if we were to go deeper and uncover and discover the processes, the thinking processes and the thinking systems that led us to develop all this knowledge, we might be able to create and generate new knowledge and therefore better our lives today and tomorrow. So it is with this vision that we thought we should have a program for Indian knowledge systems on this campus. It touches so many aspects of everybody's lives that one can't study all of Indian knowledge systems as a part of one project alone. So we thought of focusing on 4 specific areas. The 4 specific areas essentially are conceptualized as follows. For IKS to be studied and for the world to benefit today and tomorrow from IKS, one thing that it needs for sure is individuals who are quite knowledgeable, not just in the sense of analytical thinking, that of course, but also going beyond that into creativity, into other kinds of knowledge, into more ways of experiencing knowledge and joy and becoming a holistic kind of a human being. So our education used to stand for all of that. So to produce such individuals, I think education and the pedagogical practices that we have had as a part of our civilizational heritage, I think is very important to study and research, and then cull out these gems, figure out how, what are the insights that we can draw out of them, and how, again, like I've been saying, help our world today and tomorrow. For this to go further, individuals need to be healthy, they need to experience joy, their well-being is very important, and that is why there is another sector that we are trying to focus on, which is health and well-being, right? And we have an expert here who will talk about that, take us through more details. The individuals who are thus, knowledgeable, are well-to-do in terms of well-being, will also then need a broader architecture that facilitates their further growth. And that is where we want to work on public systems. And finally, all of this growth being facilitated by public systems can be force multiplied through the use of technology. So we are conceptualizing this as these 4 platforms, and there is a specific reason why we call this platform. The idea is to not just do teaching, research, and innovation the way the current academia imagines. Of course, all of that will happen. But the idea is to also make this a platform where this approach of working is combined with other works, other insights and other works that we can imagine coming out of our civilizational wisdom. And then these platforms will eventually, hopefully, lead to their own programs, individual programs. This is the beginning to have these 4 programs. Just to sort of delve a little deeper into some of these ideas, one of our panelists will talk about this in more detail, but if you talk about education, for instance, I think what we will try to do as a part of our work in the education platform is to uncover, what is the worldview that an individual who's educated in a typically Indian way, in the civilizationally Indian way, what is their worldview? How will they look at the world? What will they think of as their purpose of existence? How can they make their existence more purposeful? And that purposeful need not only be in the spiritual realm, it can also be in the material realm, but how to just integrate all of that existence. I think ideas and insights about that will come from work into this, but not just remaining at a broader sort of philosophical level. I think there are very specific pedagogical elements that can be drawn. And Professor Sampadanand Mishra here will probably talk about it. There is something called Avdhana Kala. He will talk about it in more detail. I don't want to take away from what he says, but I think the immense activation of somebody's intelligence and somebody's abilities that can happen through this specific pedagogical practice, I think can be mind-blowing if it is done properly, after a lot of research, after a lot of evidence gathering, and with a lot of creative ability. Similarly, health and well-being, Rajiv Vasudevanji, who's a part of our panel, he will talk about how, of course, it has a role to play in an individual's, health and maybe even preventive health, not just curative health, but also the role that it can play in designing, a better, a more integrated, maybe even a more affordable kind of healthcare system. Public systems, I think the way our public systems, our state particularly, is structured, it should be such that it is able to recognize the need for this kind of growth and then create, platforms and ways and approaches and means for that to happen. I was referring to, Rajiv Kumarji, I was referring to this book. I was very impressed when I first looked at the book, Mismeasuring Our Lives. Very interesting premise of the book. 2007-8, Nicolas Sarkozy, President of France, he realized that, and researchers have for a long time known that GDP is not the only way, not the best way to measure economic output, etc., etc. And he actually set up a commission consisting of 2 Nobel laureates and one scientist, one economist from France in their Sciences Po Institute. And they did a whole bunch of, research on, what are the issues with the current measure and how that measure can be expanded, how this entire thing can come together, etc., etc. And then it was left to the French government to push it in their system for some time, whatever time they could do that. And then also they tried to take it to Euro, things like that. My sense is if we are able to do enough research on public systems, some of the questions that are posed in that book will quite resonate with what we will try to think of as our civilizational knowledge. Maybe solutions will be different if we are able to think through our thinking frameworks, but such thinking, introduction and triggering of such thinking and sustaining of such thinking should be sustained by the public systems of this country. It should not be only France that thinks of such a thing. I think our country should also, it should take the lead, in fact, because there is a lot of wisdom that points to many such things, and a lot of wisdom that points not just to the questions but also to the answers. Maybe there is a need also to do a lot of theory building on what a state that is grounded in Indian civilizational realities will look like. Those things also are the kind of things that at least we would like to have a dialogue on and eventually get into the research mode. Technology as a force multiplier, I think it's an important area. It impacts everybody's lives. And one, for example, thing that we would like to do in technology is to, for example, figure out what kind of technology would it be that does not take an individual's consciousness and completely put it in directions which actually take them away from how and what they think of themselves, or a technology that does not break communities but actually makes communities, right? So what would that technology look like? It's a very deep question. What would the characteristics of such a technology is? What would specific products of such technologies be? Very, very deep question. The answers will not really come only by doing research the way we typically do. There is a different way of doing research, I think, that will need to happen for such ideas and thoughts on technology to emerge. So this is what we have set out for ourselves. We will see as time progresses how things go. How we are planning to do all of this, I talked about why we need to do that, I talked about what we want to do, how we want to do things. Of course, the usual teaching of courses. So next 1 semester, 2 semester, you should start seeing introduction of some of these courses, some with credits, some in the form of workshops that students can take, students of all backgrounds can take. You should see much more of workshops by experts from around the world. You should also see smaller dialogues, more done in informal settings where there is deep thinking going on, no pressure maybe for time, not just presentations, but a very active dialogue kind of a thing. So we want to facilitate such conversations. We also are conceiving an idea. Just before coming here, we were talking to our sponsor, Shri Ram Gupta ji, an idea of, we are currently referring it to as scholar in residence. So imagine somebody who has deep wisdom, deep knowledge in all of these things. We bring them to the campus. That person spends a week, 4 weeks, 2 months, whatever. And then a whole variety of things happen. There can be talks, there can be guiding of students, there can be, other kinds of engagement with all kinds of other stakeholders. So doing these activities constantly, like Professor Rao talked about, engaging with the rest of the stakeholders, and doing a lot of partnership with organizations which are out of academia. So we have one such organization represented here in the moderator. Raghav Krishna ji is the founder of an organization, beautiful organization called Bharat. A lot of wonderful work, I think, in terms of thought building is also happening out of academia. And it is only to our peril if we don't partner and learn from some of these ideas. So I think these platforms and the way the project is structured, is conceived, will try to do these things using some of these ideas, and more approaches will evolve as we go along. Before I end, I would like to sort of also add that when we say research, we are not talking only about research that produces specific outcomes. Of course, that is going to happen. But also research that helps us produce more meta thinking, more development of thought, basic principles, even going to paradigms where needed. So some of these things are nebulous right now, and they will all concretize as we go along. I would like to end on a very, very humble note. Many of these questions also we don't really know how to frame properly. Of course, we have very little idea of how to find the answers to this, and there are definitive reasons why that has happened. Indian knowledge systems as a way of thinking, as an area, as it was talked about by the host, has a very interesting recent history. Until, to my mind, until maybe 15, 18 years back, I think, formal institutions in our country, or stakeholders in formal institutions in our country, used to take two extreme positions on this. There would be a set of people who would say, no matter what it is, you name a thing and it is found in Indian wisdom. Right? That is one extreme. And of course, maybe it is true, maybe it is not true, but you definitely cannot claim unless you have, evidence and rigorous evidence to say that. And on the other hand, we had a set of people who would just shy away from it so badly and say there is nothing good at all that can come out of it, right? So in the last 15 odd years, I think we have learned how to take a more nuanced approach, and that has actually resulted in a lot of IKS centers and programs proliferating across the country. So as we speak, from the count that I had about 6 months back, I think, this is the 9th IIT out of the 23 IITs, maybe there are more, which have either a full-fledged center with dedicated faculty like IIT Kharagpur and IIT Roorkee, or some kind of a program, or some courses running, etc., etc. So 9 IIT, and this is the 9th IIT now, having some kind of a program with some courses. We don't have dedicated faculty teaching this right now, but still, this is a beginning. So 9th IIT, any number of universities in the country today are trying to, I myself am talking to some people who are interested in knowing how we did this at IIT Delhi. So there are all these, other universities, IITs that are trying to get into IKS from a very, like I described, nuanced approach, not taking either of the extreme position, but taking it at what it is, with humility, trying to understand what it is and how we can take it forward. The government is also quite supportive. There's a full-fledged IKS division now, headed by a professor from IIT Indore, doing things in what I think a fairly, rigorous, creative sort of a way. All of this has started to happen. Very good signs, but still, given that there has been a long gap in how we have looked at our systems and uncovered and discovered the knowledge, it will take us quite some time before we can come to a stage where we can say, okay, this is a problem that we have identified, and this is the solution that can emerge from this knowledge. We are quite some time away from that. And I think for us to reach that space, that zone, we will need support from each one of you that is around here. It cannot happen with one person or a team of people alone. The support of everybody is needed. The first step of putting in resources has happened at the IIT Delhi campus. I'm very, very grateful to Shri Ram Gupta. Actually, when I've talked to him multiple times on phone, in-person meetings, the way his journey has started in IKS is quite inspiring to me. I think I just wish there were many, many more such Ram Guptas who were inspired by IKS despite the initial journey that Ram Gupta ji has had. And maybe he will share it in his address. So that initial step of providing resources has happened. I think it is up to us, the rest of the community, to really take it forward from here and, really give our due to the civilizational knowledge corpus that we have, and really give our due to the rest of the world so that it can benefit from this civilizational corpus. With that, I would like to conclude what I have to say, and I request the host to take this program forward. Thank you.